And then around the same time, I moved out from downtown San Francisco out towards the beach. A friend of mine had bought a house, who was a guitar player, and everyone living in this house were basically musicians or just cool people, that he knew, that were involved in music. It was one of those things. So I was encouraged, of course, to buy a drum set, and all that, and we just played a lot of music, and I even created my own little streaming radio station at the time called KRAP, and it was just a big playlist, that circulated every 48 hours. And this was about the same period of time when I re-invited myself to the game of golf, and I was a bit of a golfer in my teens, played on the high school team and all that stuff, was always average at best, and here I am, after years of trying to drink all the beer in Boston and then all the beer in San Francisco, I just kind of picked up the bag and started to play golf again, which was great fun, in that regard. This is around the same time I met my future wife, and she and I kind of hit it off instantly. I met her on the premise that I asked her out, to for a 20-minute coffee, thinking, well, you know how it is, let's have a 20-minute coffee, and in the 20 minutes you either leave or whatever. Well, it ended up being like a 4-hour outing where, we hopped on a train, went downtown, had lunch together, and whatnot, talked a lot, all that stuff, and 4 hours later I was, bidding her farewell. Within 2 years, we married. It was incredibly fun, because we met on, August 11th. We got engaged on August 11th of the next year, and then we got married on August 11th of the next year after that. So August 11th, and the number 11 has always been big to us, every 11th of the month we do a special celebration. She has taken me to so many places that I would never have gone, like home ownership. I would never have considered that before I met her. Even owning a dog, that kind of thing. Just being able to maximize resources and kind of put things together so that our life would only get better. And I credit that to her, because she was always the pilot, of the plane, if you would. I was just the navigator that helped her get to the destination. Within so many years we were able to get our act together and of course move to Terceta. One of the first things we did when we met each other was because she is a wonderful singer, we started making music together. The music still lives out there, and by the time we got to Terceta, she was just totally happy. She always wanted to live here. She had a good command of the Portuguese language. So we kind of, we bought a house, we fixed it up. I was able to, build a recording, multimedia studio, the place I'm in right now. And, we also have a farm, a small farm, with goats and chickens. And so, that's really, a big thing for her, because she loves animals. And in fact, all told, we have, about 10, dozen goats, who knows how many chickens, and 5 cats, 2 dogs. I mean, it's hard to walk around here. Every 10 paces, you're gonna bump into an animal, and I've grown to really love these animals. Unlike cities like San Francisco or Boston, this place really resembled more of where I grew up as a young boy, in the middle of Massachusetts. A community that supports each other, a community that celebrates with each other, a community that looks after each other. So it really hasn't been anything but a beautiful experience.
I arrived on the island of Terceira on May 5th, 2018. It was a nice day here. And I had previously taken a red eye from Boston. And so I got here in the morning around 7 or so, where my wife was waiting for me at the airport, where she picked me up and brought me to our new home. And one of the first things we did after that was we went to a local cafe to get a morning cup. And I had what was known as a cafe musica, which is basically a cafe with a side of whiskey. On paper, I had just retired. So I was basically walking into my next phase of life. The whole immigration process of going to the consulate in San Francisco to the moment I stepped on land on the island took about 3 months, and it involved a lot of jumping through hoops, because you just don't walk into a consulate and say you want to move to Portugal and have them say, oh, okay, as every door shut behind you, a new one opened in front of you. And it got to the point where there was no turning back. So there was a lot of uncertainty. Yet once we were here, it became clear that this was the best decision we ever made in our life. The first 3 weeks, or so, a month maybe, on Terceira, we both just had clothes on our back, because the shipment of our belongings was still in the ocean somewhere and being processed through customs and that sort of thing. We waited at least a month before anything else got here. So it was a pretty lean month or so, but it was great. The island of Terceira is a volcanic island, much like a Hawaiian island. And it's about 20 miles east-west and 10 miles north-south. And there's about 30 communities, which are all unique in their own way. Some communities excel in farming, some excel in fishing, and they all have their character. I had first visited Terceira a year prior to moving here. It was a 2-week vacation. We stayed in the village of Porto Martins, and on the very first day, we came upon a what they call a tirata de corda, and it's really translated. It's basically a bullfight with with several people, seven people holding and controlling the animal with a rope. People celebrate life every single day. In fact, from May 1st to the end of September, there's usually a festival, a party of some sort happening in some community on the island. I knew at that point that this island has been waiting for me, in a sense, because anyone who knows me well knows that I do like to celebrate life myself. We eventually moved to a village called Casa de Hebeda, which is largely a farm community. And one of the special things about living in a place like this is the fact that everyone seems to be able to know how to do everything. While, speaking for myself, I hardly know how to use a hammer or a saw, whereas just about everyone I've encountered here knows how to build a house. I get a sense that, when you live on an island, every single person is important because, you need the baker, you need the butcher, you need, all essential people. There's doctors, there's dentists, there's, you name it. They all have to exist here. And if for some reason those people are not around any longer, someone has to fill in their shoes. So, but the important takeaway here is that, every single person, is extremely important.